and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about the idea of self-care. I know these days self-care is kind of a buzzword, and a lot of people when they think of self-care think of taking a bubble bath or going shopping or binge watching Netflix, which are all great things. But I just want to talk a little bit more about my journey with self-care and what self-care looks like for me, and just what I have learned along the way of discovering what types of self-care personally works for me. So I just want to talk a little bit more about my personal journey with self-care. I am a social worker, and I did both my undergrad and my master's degree in social work, specifically clinical social work. So a lot of my schooling was about how to properly take care of yourself when you're in a helping profession and you're giving so much of yourself to other people, as well as holding a lot of the weight of other people's things that they're going through on yourself. A couple years ago when I was in my undergrad, the idea of self-care was introduced to me, and at the time I definitely had the whole notion of, oh, taking a bubble bath or going shopping or eating a bunch of ice cream is a good form of self-care. That's kind of the idea of self-care that I had in my head. But I was introduced to a type of self-care that is more productive and is really focusing in on what I need in any given moment. This could look like a lot of different things, whether it be meditation or deep breathing or being able to debrief with someone after a work day, however that would look in the social work profession. And I started just to ponder that and try to implement that into the work that I was doing at the time. And I found that it was helpful, but I don't really think I had a grasp on what exactly I need for self-care at that time. Then fast forward to about 9 months ago when I started my master's degree in social work. I had a lot going on. I was starting my master's and had an internship and was engaged in planning for a wedding, and just a lot of things were changing, a lot of things were happening. It was a really big transition point in my life, and as I started with school, I just felt very not myself. I felt very out of it, very irritable. I felt like I could flip in an instant, and just so drained. And I knew that I had to change something in the way that I was caring for myself during this super busy transitional season. When I had hit this point of feeling super out of it and just not myself, I started reaching out to some of my old professors and current professors who have done their research and PhDs in self-care, just to gain a little bit more knowledge about maybe different types of self-care that I didn't know about that could potentially be helpful to me. And I just started having conversations with them and started trying and kind of doing trial and error with different forms of self-care in my own life. And throughout these past 9 months, I can say that I have come a very long way in just the ability to take care of myself emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. And I am really proud of my progress there, and I am really excited just to share some of my tips and some things that I have implemented into my life with you. I have learned that self-care is critical when we are continuously giving so much of ourselves to our jobs and our families and our relationships. And in my own life, I've been able to see my creativity and my joy and my relationships just flourish since I have learned how to properly care for myself. We all know the analogy on an airplane of securing your own oxygen mask before you help somebody else. And that is also true in our everyday lives, especially for people in helping professions or caregiving positions or parents who are constantly giving so much of themselves to other people and holding the weight of other people daily. It is so important that we know how to take care of ourselves and are implementing those things into our lives before we try to help other people. So before we jump into my tips, I have really learned that there are two different forms of self-care, productive self-care and relaxing self-care. And what I have found to be the most helpful is that I have a balance of the two, and whatever stressors I'm facing at the time might change what type of self-care I need. So just some overall tips that I have when you are thinking about implementing self-care into your life that I have found to be really helpful are to plan it out. So when I first started trying to actually seriously implement self-care into my life, I would truly write it down in my planner. So say my self-care that I wanted to practice one day was 5 minutes of just breathing at the end of the day to kind of let go of whatever happened that day. I would truly write it in my planner and sometimes even set an alarm on my phone so that I knew that that was when I was going to practice self-care that day. And this is a really good way to start out, and I think over time it becomes a little bit more habitual and you don't maybe have to plan it out quite as much. But when you're first starting, this is so helpful. My second and third tip for implementing self-care into your life kind of go hand in hand. The first one is to take your time. Like I said, this journey for me has been really the main part of it has been over the last 9 months, which is a pretty long time. And I am still learning and I am still growing and trying to know myself better. And so definitely just take your time. And my third tip is to give yourself grace. I was not perfect at self-care. I would get frustrated and I would not think it was helping and I would forget to do it and I would neglect it at the beginning. And it's so important that you give yourself grace through it so that self-care doesn't become something that's stressful for you or that creates any sort of shame or guilt for not practicing it. And my last overall tip before I dive into what I actually do for self-care is probably the most difficult for me, but has been the most impactful. And that is to learn the cues of your body. So throughout the last 9 months, I have just taken a lot of time to reflect on how I react in certain situations and how I feel under different types of stress, as well as what I need in those specific situations. Because what I need after a really stressful day is different than what I need if I had a really hurtful day or a really tiring day. And just being able to know my body really well, to know what I need in any specific moment, has been a complete game changer for me when it comes to self-care. So now I want to jump into 12 different things that I have tried to implement for self-care in the last 9 months or have been attempting to implement. Some are not groundbreaking in any way, but they are things that have worked for me, and I'm sure things that you have heard about. But these are just the different things that I have found to be really helpful, and I'm hoping that some of them might resonate with you guys as well. So the first thing that I've really been trying to implement, especially lately being home so much, is a routine. So I find that with my personality, I thrive off of a routine. I like when my days are predictable and I know what I'm going to be doing and when. And just having that consistency has been amazing for me mentally over the past 9 months, especially when I was in school and wedding planning and doing all of those things. It was a lot to keep track of, and a lot of things were up in the air and uncertain. So having the certainty of a routine each day kind of put my mind at ease. My next tip is pretty common when it comes to self-care, and that is being active. I have found that through really stressful times, and especially these last 9 months, being active in any way has helped my mental and emotional health so much. While I know it always helps my physical health, I've definitely seen other benefits other than just my physical health. And so most recently, just being able to go for a walk or maybe do a workout or something like that has been really helpful for me, and just releasing those endorphins, especially on days where I just might not be feeling it or might be feeling really down. I have found that those things really boost my mood and also help with my productivity. My third tip has been the most difficult for me to implement and get good at, but I feel like I am in a place now where I am decent at it, and it has made the biggest difference in my life, and that is saying no. So all throughout college, I had a really hard time saying no to all activities and commitments, and I wanted to do everything, and I had serious FOMO and didn't want to miss out on anything. And so I would say yes to everything I got invited to. And it was draining. And over the last year, just with how busy I've been, I have realized that I can't say yes to everything and I have to be able to turn things down. And just the feeling of knowing myself well enough to be able to say, that's too much for me. I'm sorry, no, I'm gonna have to pass this time, is kind of empowering. Like, I feel like I know myself so well that I can take care of myself in that way, and it feels really good. My fourth thing that I have implemented is taking time alone. So I am an extrovert, and so I do really love being around people. But in the past year, I have just learned that even if you're an extrovert, you need time alone. And while you might not need time alone to feel recharged, I have found that time alone has really allowed me to learn those cues of my body that I was talking about before, and to really just reflect on what I need in any given moment. Because amidst the chaos of the world, it's really hard to tune in with yourself to realize what you need. So for me, taking time, even just going up to my room and listening to some music and not even necessarily doing anything, but just being alone, has really allowed me to learn more about myself and be able to care for myself in any moment. Kind of going along with that last tip, my sixth strategy that I have implemented is allowing myself to feel and welcoming any emotions that I have. This has been also a difficult thing to implement in my life, just because some feelings are really uncomfortable. Like, being really hurt to me or being really scared to me is very uncomfortable. But allowing myself to just feel those things however I need to, whether it be crying or talking to somebody or whatever that needs to look like, I have found that I am able to manage those emotions so much more when they are first acknowledged and felt. And one way that I have found really helpful to acknowledge those difficult feelings is if you have someone who you typically confide in or share feelings with, sharing how you're feeling with them, but not apologizing for it, not trying to fix it. We so often are told not to feel, or that we're too sensitive, or let's do this so that you can feel better. But just being able to confide in somebody and say, I am feeling really hurt, and I'm just gonna let myself sit with that and feel it for a little while before we talk through it or process through it. I would say that strategy has been the most beneficial in managing really difficult emotions and just in my overall emotional health. My sixth strategy is kind of fun, and it's to just be really present and get lost in something that you love. So for me, what that looks like most of the time is when I'm cooking. I find myself really getting lost in trying to prepare a perfect meal and making the presentation on the plate just look amazing. And it can just be really relieving sometimes to put all of your attention on something that you enjoy, and it can kind of help to relieve those difficult feelings or stressors that you have going on, even if it's only just for a short amount of time. My seventh strategy is something that has definitely evolved over the past years. I used to be a journaler and I would journal every single day, but I found that it was almost a lot of pressure for me to journal, because sometimes I felt like I didn't know what to say, or if I didn't have the perfect thing to say, then it wasn't good enough to write down, and just there was a lot of judgment that came with journaling for me. And so more recently, and through these past 9 months, I have been doing a brain dump, and I basically just keep a notebook by my bed, and every single night at the end, I just jot a couple things down. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be things that are stressful for me. It could be great things about that day, things that I want to do for the next day. Just, I go in with no rules and I just jot down anything that's on my mind that I feel like I need to get out of my head before I go to sleep. And that has been really helpful for me to be able to get really good rest and to not lay there with my brain just going all night. So just something that has no rules and it's no judgment, no pressure, but just a way to get thoughts out of your head before you go to sleep for the night. My next strategy is a very productive strategy, and this idea was given to me near the beginning of the year by one of my professors when I went to her seeking out more advice for self-care. And I was just talking about my feelings of being so overwhelmed that I didn't even know where to start, and I couldn't organize things in my head anymore, and I was just way too overwhelmed. And she told me about a 5-minute rule, and I am not the best at implementing this right now, but I find when I am implementing this and I'm doing a good job with that it's so helpful. And what this rule is anything that comes to your mind that you need to do that you can get done in 5 minutes, you do it immediately. So I found that my to-do list was just piling up with things, even as small as switch my loads of laundry. Since I have adopted this rule of if I can do it in 5 minutes, then as soon as it comes to my mind, I do it right now. I have found that those little things aren't piling up on my to-do list, and it makes my lists in general just seem so much less daunting, and it makes me feel so productive to not have those little things always lingering and needing to be done. The 9th thing that I have been trying to implement for my self-care is to ask for help. And this is definitely not an easy one for me because I am fairly independent and I really like to get things done on my own. But with so much going on for me in the past 9 months, I have learned that it is essential to ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. And most of the time, friends and family, they want to help and they want to be there for you. So this has been really helpful just as a realization that you don't have to be in anything alone. You can ask for help getting things done, or you can ask for help in the way of just asking someone to listen or just to be there with you if you're trying to process through something difficult. And it's just so helpful to know that we're not alone in this life, and we have relationships and people for a reason. So we don't need to do things by ourselves, and we can reach out and ask for help. And that goes hand in hand with my 10th thing, which is connecting with people. This has been something that I've always really done. Like I said, I'm an extrovert and I love people. And so I've always been trying to reach out to people and have conversations and stay updated on what's going on in everybody's life. But I find now, like, especially when things are so busy, it is really easy to kind of neglect that part of your life. But if you're someone like me who really is filled up by relationships, it's so important to make time to continue to connect with people. Even if you have to schedule it in and it's a quick coffee date or a quick phone call or a quick FaceTime, I find it just so helpful to have those moments with friends or family that really just fill you up and just to help you know that you are supported and that you're not alone. My 11th strategy is all about fueling your body. So I'm sure we've all heard of self-care in the form of fueling your body with nutritious foods and just taking care of yourself in that way. Something I'd like to know personally is that I find that this form of self-care, it's really important to remain intuitive and to not be strict as a way to control this area of your life. And so for me, fueling my body means fueling my body, but also fueling my soul with food. And so having that balance of really healthy foods to keep me going and keep me productive and keep me feeling really great, but also having those foods that I just really enjoy to make me happy and to just feed my soul. The last thing that I have implemented over this past year for self-care is seeking therapy. And this can look really different. Some people seek out therapy, some people seek out just a mentor, someone to talk to on a regular basis who isn't necessarily always directly involved in their lives. But for me, it has looked like therapy, and it has been the most life-changing experience. And as someone who literally is going to school to do that type of work, I know that everyone can benefit from it. However, I definitely had the idea going in that I don't need it. I won't get anything out of it. But even if huge things weren't going on in my life, these monumental things or any tragedies, just being able to go and talk to somebody who is not emotionally involved in your life or in your decisions is so beneficial. My therapist is so helpful to help me sort out my thoughts and make decisions on my own, just by helping me realize what I actually want and what I'm actually thinking. And if none of that, she's just someone to listen. And so it has been just an incredible experience for me. Those are my tips and the things that I am implementing for self-care. And I hope that this video was helpful or gave you some ideas for how you could implement self-care into your life. Leave a comment down below of something that you use for self-care or something that you got from this video that you might want to try. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!